From salons to boutiques to fitness gyms, the shutdown has been devastating to so many small women-owned businesses across the city. At the same time, there are so many amazing women finding ways to not only survive the crisis, but lift others up along the way. Gayle Jennings O'Byrne is one of those women. As founder of the WOCstar Fund, she is dedicated to empowering female-founded startups led by women of color. WOCstar, which was established in 2019, is a venture capital firm that invests in diverse, inclusive teams in the tech sector. During the pandemic, O'Byrne jumped into action to help female entrepreneurs understand the many resources and programs available to women. She says there is still help out there, and yes, investors are still writing checks.
You launched in 2019, so you were recently formed. How did you respond?
So the first thing we did was we reached out to all the female entrepreneurs and the diverse tech teams that we knew, just to make sure that they were okay and that we understood what their needs were. So we spent a lot of time on talking through what their budgets looked like, what their sales pipeline looked like, how their employees were doing, what their cash reserves, if they had reserves, looked like. And so we immediately went into how do we help the entrepreneurs, whether they're ones that we've already invested in, ones that we may invest in. That was our first thought. And that's where we've been spending a lot of our time. The beautiful thing and the thing that sort of feeds our soul is that women, particularly inclusive, diverse women and teams, is there's so much grit and resiliency that in some ways, even in spite of COVID, there was this sense of can-do and confidence that has just been, kicked into high gear now, but was always there. So that's really been a lot of what we've been doing and how we first approached the market when this happened.
That's amazing. Maybe you can tell our audience a little bit about WOCstar Fund and then some of the companies that you invest in.
So we're an early stage investment fund, which means we invest in companies at the seed or Series A level. So there are companies that are just putting products and services out in the marketplace, and they're building their products and their client base. And so that's really the stage that we work in, because we can provide not only a check, right, the funding, but we can also provide our expertise, our operational knowledge. We can make introductions, and we can just be champions and advocates for them in very different ways. The thing we're most obsessed about is what the future looks like, and even more so now, right? So how are we going to play? How are we going to work? What does it look like in terms of how we commute, how we take care of one another? And so with COVID-19 happening, we haven't really shifted our thinking and our investment strategy. We've just sort of gone deeper into it. So some of the companies that we've already been talking to are already building solutions around COVID-19. We know of a woman who's doing some amazing stuff around testing related to COVID-19. There's others that are also innovating in the healthcare space. And then we have others that are in the media space that we're invested in, as well as in the infrastructure and clean tech space.
How can you explain how you invest in women and what amounts, or who can come to you if they're working on something right now?
Great question. So one I would say is there's a lot of solopreneurs out there. And so investment dollars, outside capital from venture capitalists like myself really isn't going to be appropriate, because for every dollar we invest, right, we want to generate 10, 20 more dollars from that $1. So when we think about who's the right for venture capital, it's those companies that have a company that is going to really scale and really take off in huge markets and in revenues in a way that can return capital to those outside investors. For companies that are building and solving big problems in the marketplace, for which a lot of capital is needed, those are the companies that are the most exciting to us. Unfortunately, there's a lot of solopreneurs. And so my dream and hope is that during this time that a lot of these solopreneurs will start to work together and build what we love to call as fempires.
I love it. Why is it important for you to focus on women of color?
One, it's what I know, right? Kind of like Warren Buffett, go to places that you know and understand. But really, it's not solely women of color. It's really about diverse teams that are reflecting the diversity in the marketplace and that are then building for those markets. But I will say that if you look back in history, some of the most innovative people have been women and inclusive teams. Think about this, your iPhone or your Android, that caller ID, that was an innovation by a woman of color. The early technology that is now the call button when you're on a plane to signal for a flight attendant, that was a woman of color. The fiber optics that we're actually using to be able to transmit this data and voice and audio and visual, that was a woman of color. So if you think about where innovations come from, it's a no-brainer not to be including women and inclusive teams in what you invest in.
Most people think that venture capital at this point during the pandemic has dried up, but I'm understanding that there is still money available out there.
There's still money and there's still really good investments to be made. If we think back in the last economic disruptions that we had, some of the best companies came out of those chaotic times. The Ubers, the WhatsApp, the Groupons, all of these great companies that we know as household brands today came out of chaotic economic disruptive times. So yes, there's money, and yes, there's great investments to be had.
Well, Gayla, thank you so much for all that you're doing for this community. And I'm sure that you have some very interesting companies under your belt right now. Would love to learn more about those companies, and hopefully we can talk again soon.
And if you want to learn more about the WOCstar Fund, simply head over to their website. That's WOCstar.com. There is an entire page dedicated to all of the COVID resources available to business owners, including a listing of more than 100 investors still writing checks during the crisis. Also, WOCstar will be launching a podcast in June, so keep an eye out for that as well. And of course, we will keep you updated.